Biology is the study of life, and this chapter is largely an introduction to that study. This chapter looks at the characteristics of natural life, the steps of the scientific method, inductive versus deductive reasoning, and basic versus applied science. Biology, as previously mentioned, is the study of living organisms and all of their interactions with the natural world. The scope of biology is as vast and diverse as our planet. From oxygen-producing bacteria, seen on the left, to stromatolite prokaryote fossils, seen on the right, we're going to examine all facets of life over the course of the next 2 semesters. That is, of course, if you're signed up for 181 and 182. Why study biology, you might ask? Study it because it's everywhere. Seen here is E. coli, which is a common life-threatening bacteria that's been recently found in spinach on store shelves and inside of your burrito bowl at Chipotle. Wouldn't you like to know what to do about it? From the AIDS research to information about new crops that could save lives, science shows up in the news, in papers, on Facebook, and in Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Being able to discern fact from fiction can literally become a matter of life or death, especially when you consider dangerous faux debates, like the insanity surrounding vaccines, which are perfectly safe. The scope of biology is vast, not only in creatures, but in possibilities. Biologists have their fingers in all sorts of fields, from astronomy to computer science, geology, logic, physics, chemistry, and even mathematics. An understanding of biology can take you a lot of places. We study biology in various ways, but a well-documented one is the scientific method. It was originally devised by Sir Francis Bacon back in the 1600s. The method starts with a suggestion or an explanation for an event. This potential explanation is known as a hypothesis. A prediction is made on a hypothesis, which allows us to form a testable and falsifiable experiment. Once experiments are performed, results can be analyzed, leading to peer-reviewed scientific papers. With years of positive, significant results and hundreds of peer reviews from educated experts, theories can be developed and then further explored throughout the scientific community. Scientists use 2 types of reasoning, known as inductive and deductive reasoning, to advance scientific knowledge. As is the case in this example, the conclusions from inductive reasoning can often become the premise for deductive reasoning. Check out this flowchart to learn the differences between the 2. Your book expands even further on this concept. So inductive reasoning is you form conclusions from a number of observations. You witness event A 1,000 times, so when you see the beginning of that event, you can probably guess how it's going to end up. That's inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning goes the other way around. From a general preface, specific results can be predicted. So read this example and see if you can understand where they're going. The scientific community has been debating for the last few decades about the value of different types of science. Is it valuable to pursue science for the sake of simply gaining knowledge, or does scientific knowledge only really have worth if we can apply it to solving a specific problem or bettering our lives? This question focuses on the difference between 2 types of science: basic science and applied science. Basic science is research for the sake of research, while applied science seeks to solve a specific problem or answer a very specific question. There are numerous links between the 2, however. Basic research on the brown pelican, which is seen here, allowed us to understand more about the bird and how it fit into general ecology. Applied science, however, has allowed us to rehabilitate these birds after hurricanes, like Hurricane Ike, which struck the Gulf Coast in 2008. Another example of a link between basic and applied scientific research is the Human Genome Project, which was a study of each human chromosome as they were analyzed and mapped to determine the precise sequences of the DNA subunits and the exact location of each gene. Other less complex organisms have also been studied as part of this project in order to gain a better understanding of human chromosomes. The HGP relied on basic research carried out on simple organisms. They kind of get a handle on what they were doing, and then that information, the lessons they learned were applied later to the human genome. An important end goal of the HGP eventually became using the data for applied research, seeking out cures and early diagnoses for genetically related diseases. Stop now and give yourself a minute. The second part of this chapter deals with the themes and concepts of biology, and there are three major questions. What makes something alive? How do we organize meaningful levels of structure for study? And then how do we organize life's incredible diversity as a whole, if you were taking a snapshot of Earth? Put some thought into these definitions. Put some thought into how you came to these definitions. This will be part of a discussion post for a week. Pause the video here, write down your answer, and then continue on. There are 7 major properties of life. One major property of life is order. This toad represents highly structured organization of the body consisting of cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. All living things have and submit to some sort of order hierarchy. Sensitivity or response to stimuli is considered one of the second properties of life. The leaves of this plant in particular can droop and fold away when touched, so we often think of stimuli as something that doesn't belong in a discussion of plants or something really basic like a prokaryote, but it definitely does. The third property of life is reproduction. Living things must be able to reproduce. Not every individual in a species will have to reproduce, but some must, or the species will no longer exist. A fourth property is growth and development over time, from tiny kitten to mama cat, for example. Regulation is the fifth property, as even the smallest organisms have to require multiple regulatory mechanisms to coordinate their internal functions, such as that response to stimuli, and to be able to cope with environmental stresses. Senior polar bear here is an excellent example of the sixth property, which is known as homeostasis. In order to function properly, cells need to have appropriate conditions like proper temperature, the correct pH, in humans that's like 7.35-ish, and the appropriate concentration of diverse chemicals like salt and chlorine. These conditions can change from moment to moment though, thanks to changes in our environments. Organisms are able to maintain internal conditions within a narrow range almost consistently, despite these environmental changes, through homeostasis. Homeostasis literally means steady state. It's the ability of an organism to maintain constant internal conditions. In the most simplest of terms, disease in humans is any time we're not maintaining this homeostasis. Finally, the seventh property of life is energy processing. All living things must consume or use energy somehow. Some rely on the sunlight for their energy, while others are only eating decaying matter at the bottom of the ocean floor. But everything needs and consumes energy. The organization of life is best seen here. Although you could technically start even smaller and say all of life's organization starts at the atom and then the molecular level, their study, however, is largely considered chemistry. Biological organization starts with an organelle, and then cells, tissues, organs and organ systems, organisms, populations, communities, ecosystems, and then our beautiful biosphere as a whole. We can organize living things on Earth quite differently using something called a phylogenetic tree of life. This particular phylogenetic tree was constructed by microbiologist Carl Woese using data obtained from sequencing ribosomal RNA genes. That might not mean much now, but you'll get it later. This tree shows the separation of living organisms into 3 different domains: bacteria, archaea or archaea, depending on who you're talking to, and eukarya. Bacteria and archaea are prokaryotes. They're single-celled organisms that lack any intracellular organelles. We're going to study all three of these domains and their components in depth, and we'll have a really strong understanding of how life works on a cellular unit, and you'll be able to put anybody into these three categories. These images represent different domains. A, up top on the left, is a bacteria, and in that micrograph, it's showing you a bacteria that belongs to domain bacteria, while B, top right, shows you some extremophiles, which technically aren't visible, but they're living in that hot vent. They belong to domain archaea. Down on the bottom, both C and D, the sunflower and the lion, are part of domain eukarya. So where are we going next now that you have this really basic understanding of what biology is and what it studies? We're going to head straight into chapter 2, and we're going to talk about chemistry and why we should care about chemistry. To better understand the material presented in this video, be sure to read the chapter, which is written in plain language and where a majority of the information in this video came from. Answer the review questions at the bottom of each section on the OpenStax website, and check the Learner platform for any related homework assignments.